A son's secret sacrifice. The house by the sea. The beach house stood quietly against the endless sound of waves, its white walls aged by salt and time. For Margaret Hale, it was not just a house, it was her entire life. Every corner carried memories of laughter, arguments, forgiveness, and love. Her late husband had built it with his own hands, plank by plank, promising it would always be their safe place. Margaret sat on the wooden porch, wrapped in an old shawl, watching the sun sink into the ocean. At 68, her body had grown weaker, but her heart still held tightly to the past. The smell of the sea reminded her of better days, days when her son, Ethan, ran barefoot on the sand, chasing seagulls and dreaming aloud. She didn't know that this sunset would be one of her last in that house. A son burdened by silence. Ethan Hale stood at the doorway watching his mother from inside. His hands trembled slightly as he held his phone. The confirmation message stared back at him. Sale completed. He closed his eyes. Ethan was not a bad son. Every decision he made was for his mother, but this one would destroy her. He knew that, yet he had no choice. For months, he had carried a secret heavier than any burden he had known. Hospital bills, debt notices, calls from banks, his mother's medical reports hidden inside a locked drawer. Margaret's heart condition was worsening, and she needed surgery soon, an expensive one. She didn't know. She believed they were fine. Ethan had chosen pain for himself so his mother could live. "We're leaving tomorrow, Mom." "Mom?" Ethan's voice broke the silence. Margaret turned, smiling softly. "Come sit. You look tired." He sat beside her, staring at the ocean. His throat felt tight. "We're leaving tomorrow," he said quietly. Margaret frowned. "Leaving? Why?" Ethan swallowed hard. I sold the beach house." The words fell like stones. Margaret's smile vanished. Her eyes widened, then filled with disbelief. "You... what?" "I sold it," he repeated, his voice hollow. She stood up suddenly, gripping the railing. "You had no right. This house, this is your father's soul." "I know," Ethan whispered. Tears streamed down her face. "How could you do this to me?" He had no answer she could understand. A mother's broken heart. That night, Margaret did not sleep. She wandered through the house, touching the walls, the furniture, the photographs. Every step felt like a goodbye she wasn't ready for. She remembered dancing in the living room with her husband, cooking breakfast for Ethan before school, nursing scraped knees. And now it was all gone. In her room, she clutched a photo of her husband and whispered, "I failed to protect our home." Her chest tightened painfully. Ethan listened from outside her door, tears sliding down his face. He pressed his forehead against the wall, silently begging for forgiveness he knew he would never receive. The truth he couldn't tell. Days passed in heavy silence. Margaret barely spoke to Ethan. She packed her belongings slowly, every movement filled with sorrow. Ethan wanted to tell her everything, about the doctors, the surgery, the truth. But fear stopped him. Fear that she would refuse treatment. Fear that guilt would kill her faster than illness. So he stayed silent. The collapse. On their final day at the beach house, Margaret collapsed. Her body dove into grief and illness at once. Ethan caught her before she hit the floor, screaming for help. At the hospital, doctors moved quickly. Ethan stood alone in the hallway, shaking, realizing how close he had come to losing her. A nurse approached gently. "She needs surgery as soon as possible." "I know," Ethan whispered. The ultimate sacrifice. Ethan signed the consent forms with hands stained by tears. The money from the house was already transferred, used to save his mother's life. As Margaret lay unconscious, Ethan sat beside her bed, holding her hand. "I'm sorry, Mom. I hope one day you understand." A tear dropped onto her hand. A truth revealed too late. Margaret woke days later, weak but alive. When she learned the truth from a nurse who spoke without knowing the damage, her world shattered again. "You sold the house for me?" she whispered. Ethan nodded, unable to speak. Her heart broke a different way this time. Regret and realization. Margaret wept, not for the house, but for her son's pain. She realized how blind she had been, how deeply he had suffered alone. She reached for him, but Ethan looked away. "I didn't want you to hate me," he said softly, "but I was ready if it meant you lived." A sad new beginning. They moved into a small apartment far from the sea. Margaret survived, but something inside her never healed. Every night she dreamed of waves. Ethan carried guilt like a shadow. The sacrifice saved a life, but cost them a home, a dream, and a piece of their hearts. Sometimes love does not end happily. Sometimes it only endures.